Stop this wedding immediately. Patricia Hammond's voice echoed through the church halls as she burst through the heavy wooden doors, her designer heels clicking dramatically against the marble floor. I stood in the bridal suite, watching her performance through the security feed I'd secretly installed 3 months ago, right on schedule. My name is Olivia Parker, and this was supposed to be my wedding day. Well, technically, it still was, just not the wedding my future mother-in-law was expecting. Mrs. Hammond, Father Michael stepped forward, confusion evident on his face. The ceremony doesn't begin for another 2 hours. There won't be a ceremony, she announced, waving an envelope like a weapon. I have proof that this marriage can't proceed. Where is she? Where's Olivia? I adjusted my veil in the mirror, checking my lipstick while listening to the chaos unfolding in the main hall. My maid of honor, Kate, squeezed my hand. Are you sure about this, Liv? She whispered. We could still do this the normal way. I smiled, remembering the day 3 months ago when I discovered Patricia's secret, not through her dramatic revelation today, but through my own careful investigation. The same day I'd started planning this exact moment. Trust me, I replied. This is exactly how it needs to happen. Through the monitor, I watched as my fiancé James rushed in, his bow tie still undone. Mom, what are you doing? We talked about this. Patricia turned to her son, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. I'm protecting you, both of you. You can't marry her, James. The Parker family, they're not who you think they are. I had to admire her commitment to the drama. She planned this perfectly, waiting until the last moment, ensuring maximum impact, probably expecting me to break down in tears and run away when she revealed her shocking discovery. What she didn't know was that I had my own plans. Mrs. Hammond, my father's calm voice cut through her theatrics as he entered from the side door. I believe you have something to say about my family? Patricia spun around, clutching her envelope tighter. Charles Parker. How dare you show your face here, knowing what your family did to mine 30 years ago? The small crowd of early arriving guests and wedding party members watched in stunned silence. This was better than any soap opera they could have imagined. You mean the real estate deal? I called out, finally making my entrance. Everyone turned to stare as I walked down the aisle, my wedding dress catching the light from the stained glass windows. The one where your father tried to swindle my grandfather out of his property using forged documents. Patricia's face went pale. How do you know about it? I finished for her, reaching the front of the church. I've known for months, Patricia. I also know about the real documents you're holding, the ones you think prove your father was the rightful owner of the Sterling Heights property. James looked between us, confused. Mom, what is she talking about? I pulled out my phone, pulling up the photos I'd carefully collected. Your mother found some old papers that she thinks prove her father owned the land my grandfather's business was built on. She's been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal this, probably hoping to stop the wedding and destroy my family's reputation in one dramatic sweep. Patricia's hands shook. You don't understand. Your grandfather stole that land from my father. These papers prove it. Actually, I said, nodding to my father, who pulled out his own envelope. These papers prove something quite different. Would you like to explain, Dad, or should I? My father stepped forward, his expression grave. The documents you're holding, Patricia, are forgeries. Created by your father in 1992. We have the original deed, plus evidence of your father's attempt to fraudulently claim ownership. Evidence that my father chose not to reveal 30 years ago, out of respect for your family's reputation. The church was silent. Patricia's perfectly orchestrated moment of triumph was crumbling around her. But I wasn't done yet. I found all this out 3 months ago, I continued, my voice echoing in the hushed space. When you started asking suspicious questions about my family's business history, I decided to do some investigating of my own. That's when I discovered your plan for today. James stepped closer to me, his face a mixture of shock and admiration. You knew? All this time? I turned to him, smiling softly. I knew, and I knew your mother would try something like this on our wedding day. That's why I planned accordingly. Patricia's voice shook as she tried to regain control of the situation. The wedding is still off. I won't let my son. The wedding is very much on, I interrupted. Just not the wedding you were expecting. What do you mean? Not the wedding I was expecting, Patricia demanded, her carefully styled hair starting to fray at the edges, much like her composure. I nodded to Kate, who pressed a button on her phone. Suddenly, the church's side doors opened and more guests began streaming in. Yes, Patricia hadn't expected to see. Is that Judge Harrison? She whispered, her face growing even paler as the distinguished judge who had presided over her father's business dealings 30 years ago walked in. And Richard Sterling? Mr. Sterling was very interested to hear about your planned revelation today, I said calmly. Especially since his father was the original surveyor who documented the true property lines back in 1992. James moved to stand beside me, finally understanding dawning on his face. The past 3 months, all those evening meetings you said were about wedding preparations. Were about gathering evidence, I finished. Your mother wasn't the only one who could do research, Patricia. The difference is, I found the truth, not just what I wanted to believe. More people filed in, attorneys who had worked the original case, former employees who had witnessed the events, even Patricia's own brother, Michael, whom she hadn't spoken to in years because he had refused to support their father's fraudulent claims. Hello, Patricia, Michael said softly. Olivia thought I should be here today. She found me last month and showed me the real documents. It's time to let this go, sister. Patricia stumbled backward, her perfect plan unraveling thread by thread. No, you don't understand. Daddy wouldn't. He couldn't have. Your father forged those documents, Judge Harrison spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of knowledge. I saw the evidence myself, but Mr. Parker chose not to press charges out of respect for your mother's illness at the time. I stepped closer to Patricia, keeping my voice gentle despite everything. I could have exposed all this months ago. I could have called off the wedding and humiliated your family the way you planned to humiliate mine. But that's not who I am. James took my hand, squeezing it supportively. So what happens now? He asked. Now, I said, looking directly at Patricia, you have a choice. You can continue with your plan, try to reveal your evidence and stop this wedding. In which case, every person in this room will testify to the truth. Your father's fraud will become public record and your family's reputation, the one my grandfather protected, will be destroyed. Patricia clutched her envelope tighter, tears smearing her expensive mascara. Or, I continued, you can be part of your son's wedding. You can let go of a 30-year-old lie and choose to be part of our family's future instead of clinging to a false past. The church was silent as everyone waited for Patricia's response. James stepped forward, addressing his mother directly for the first time. Mom, he said softly, I knew about this too. Olivia told me everything last month. I've seen the evidence. Please, let it go. Patricia looked around the church, at the faces of people who knew the truth, at her brother reaching out to her, at her son pleading with her. The envelope slipped from her fingers, falling to the floor like the last autumn leaf surrendering to winter. I really thought, she began, her voice breaking. I know what you thought, I said. But now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do with it? The next few moments would determine everything. Whether this would be the wedding we had planned, or whether Patricia would choose to destroy herself trying to maintain a lie that could no longer survive in the light of truth. She looked at the envelope on the floor, then at her son, and finally at me. In that moment, I saw the exact instant when 30 years of belief crumbled under the weight of reality. The flowers, she whispered, almost to herself. In the reception hall. They're all wrong. I should go fix them. It wasn't an apology, not yet, but it was a surrender, and for now, that was enough. As she turned and walked quickly toward the reception hall, her heels no longer clicking quite so confidently, I caught James's eye and smiled. The crisis was averted, but more importantly, we had given Patricia a way to save face while facing the truth. That's why I love you, James murmured, pulling me close. You didn't just expose the truth. You found a way to help her accept it. I watched as Patricia's brother followed her out, ready to help her begin healing from a decades-old wound. Sometimes I thought the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's finding a way to turn potential destruction into an opportunity for healing. Now we could focus on what really mattered, our wedding, and the future we would build together. The ceremony that followed wasn't exactly what we'd originally planned, but it was more meaningful than I could have imagined. As I walked down the aisle, I saw Patricia in the front row, her brother beside her, her eyes red but her head held high. She'd spent the last hour rearranging flowers, channeling her emotions into creating something beautiful, perhaps her first step toward making amends. When Father Michael asked if anyone objected to our union, the silence in the church spoke volumes. Patricia met my eyes briefly, giving a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. During the reception, something unexpected happened. As James and I finished our first dance, Patricia approached the microphone. The room tensed, memories of her earlier outbursts still fresh. I had a different speech prepared for today, she began, her voice shaky. One born from years of bitterness and misunderstanding. But instead, she paused, taking a deep breath. Instead, I want to tell you about the moment I realized what kind of woman my son was marrying. I felt James squeeze my hand as we listened. 3 months ago, Olivia could have exposed everything. She could have destroyed not just my reputation, but the memory of my father. Instead, she chose to give me a chance to face the truth with dignity. She protected our family's privacy while refusing to let a lie persist. Patricia turned to face us directly. Olivia, I spent so long convincing myself that your family had wronged mine that I couldn't see the truth. Your grandfather showed mercy when he could have sought vengeance. And today, you did the same. Tears were flowing freely now, not just from Patricia but from many of the guests who understood the weight of this moment. So while this isn't the speech I plan to give, it's the one that needs to be said. Welcome to our family, Olivia. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the strongest person isn't the one who strikes back, but the one who finds a way to break the cycle of hurt. The room erupted in applause as Patricia stepped down from the podium. I stood up, meeting her halfway across the dance floor. Without words, we embraced. Not as adversaries, not even as mother and daughter-in-law, but as two women who had found a way past decades of pain. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around us, Judge Harrison approached with an old leather portfolio. Your grandfather would be proud, he said, handing me the folder. He always said the Parker family's true legacy wasn't in property or wealth, but in how we treated others, especially those who wronged us. Inside the portfolio were the original documents from 30 years ago, along with a letter my grandfather had written explaining his decision not to pursue legal action against Patricia's father. Sometimes, the letter read, the greatest victory isn't in winning the battle, but in choosing not to fight it at all. True strength lies in having the power to destroy someone and choosing instead to help them rebuild. As the evening wound down, I found James standing on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. You know, he said, pulling me close, when you told me about Mom's plan last month, I was terrified about how today would play out. I leaned into him, remembering those tense conversations. I knew it could go either way, but I had to believe that given the chance, she would choose healing over hatred. You gave her more than a chance, he replied. You gave her a way to save face, to maintain her dignity while facing the truth. That's what changed everything. The sound of laughter drifted up from below, and we looked down to see Patricia and her brother Michael sharing a moment, decades of estrangement beginning to melt away. Sometimes, I said, the happy ending isn't about winning or losing. It's about finding a way for everyone to move forward together. James kissed me softly. So, Mrs. Parker Hammond, ready to start our own legacy? I smiled, thinking about my grandfather's letter and the lessons it contained. I think we already have. Our legacy started the moment we chose love over revenge, truth over triumph. As we rejoined our guests, I caught Patricia's eye across the room. She raised her glass in a quiet toast, and I knew that while the road ahead might not always be smooth, we had laid a foundation of understanding that would sustain us through whatever challenges came our way. Sometimes the best endings aren't about dramatic revelations or public vindication, but about the quiet victories that come from choosing grace over grievance, healing over hurt, and love over the easy path of revenge.